What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 2 of On Your Left. My name is Kyle, your host. We're here for the second episode of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier review. So yeah, really quick, guys, if you haven't seen the show before, this is only the second episode. Welcome to Project Potter. Thanks for checking out the channel. Check out the other content. But basically, guys, this is going to give you a quick recap, a score. It's kind of branching off of our Reviewers Assemble. So go check out all those videos, guys, where we do every MCU movie in the Infinity Saga, which you can kind of see behind me, I think. And but yeah, this is kind of a mini series. We didn't do it for WandaVision, but we did do it for episode 1. And so welcome back, guys. This one, man, this show, I had such high expectations for the show, and it's just exceeding them. And I'm really excited for where the MCU is and where it's going and where it can stand, because I think that these Disney Plus shows, they really hit like that sweet spot where it's like you don't have to have a major release every year, every 2 years for MCU. I mean, I think they still will have those, but you can get the sweet spot where you have these interconnecting shows, or these shows that are interwoven into the larger universe, at the same AAA quality, because the budget's there, because the audience is there, because Marvel knows what they're doing, Kevin Feige knows what they're doing, and it's just crazy. So the recap here. So we start off with John Walker, and he's going through, he's got the US Army suit on, and this is the guy who came out as the new Captain America at the end of episode 1, and we're like, who is this schmuck? He's got like a cheesy smile, he looks kind of like Cap, but the suit is different, and he's different. So this is like, it's like a bizarro Cap. So I like that they acknowledged in this episode multiple times. He's like, look, there's a scene later on where he's like, look, I'm not trying to be Steve. He's like, I'm trying to be the best Captain America I can be. And it's like, that's really cool, because they're reflecting on Cap's legacy and Steve Rogers' legacy, but they're like, this is our Cap. It's like when they did the New 52, where it's like, this is our version of Cap. So it's cool, because in some ways it's like really nostalgic, and it's like, the action scenes sometimes can feel just like the MCU Cap when Steve was in there and throwing the shield around, and then there's other times where it's like, oh, you're just not quite there. There's just something off about this Cap. So I think they do a really good job of like kind of giving you that excitement, like, oh, this is Cap, but it's not the Cap we know. So that's really cool. But basically, guys, introduces John Walker. He does say, like, there's a lot of people, a lot of responsibility that comes with wearing that suit. He's like, everyone in the world wants me to be something, and he's like, I just don't want to let them down. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like, I could gotta go for this John Walker. He wants to do the right thing, clearly. His heart's in the right place. They later tell, like, about how he's not a super soldier, so he doesn't have super strength, but he's like got the most impressive military stats, where he's like, they have a picture, like a montage of him like throwing the shield, and it looks awesome because it comes back to him, and it's like he's like passing all these physical tests, and he later talks about how he jumped on a grenade and all that stuff. So he's got the shades of Steve, but Steve is a true hero, and he was Captain America. Like, nothing will replace that. And this show knows that they're not just going to throw they can't just like throw the brand of Cap on there and be like, this is the new Cap. It's like when you go to the grocery store, right, and you got Captain Crunch, and then you got the off-brand Captain Crunch, and it's like, this is what we're getting, is the off-brand Captain Crunch. We know it's not going to be as good as the brand name, but you're getting something similar, and I like that it kind of shows the differences in this Cap compared to Steve's Cap, and how there's expectations and he might not meet them, or he might, I don't know, it's crazy. It's really cool that we're getting like basically a second Cap in the MCU, so I love that they're playing with that idea. Anyways, sorry, I feel like I'm kind of derailing off of the recap here, but yeah, we do get introduced to John a little bit here. He has like they introduce Cap to the world, basically like on like a CNN broadcast, but it's like a homecoming. They play the Star Spangled Man, which is like Cap's theme, where he's like, a bullet for your best man, or buying bonds and all that shit from like First Avenger, which is like one of my favorite movies. But they like jazz it up. It's like the original Cap theme, but it's like modernized, so it's not quite Cap, but it does give you like kind of the shots there. There's like the shot from the trailer, which we saw like way back when the show was announced, where he comes in and he like high fives the guy, but like, and we're like, is that Cap or is that a new suit? Now we know, obviously it's the it's like the government's cap, which is like different than the original suit. So it's still pretty cool, but it's a little bland. But I mean, the helmet is pretty much the same. He gives like the smile, and he's got like sort of a personality, but this cap is so cheesy, where it's like John Walker, and I like that he's different, but John Walker is like, it's like cringy every line that he's got, where it's like, even when he's trying to do the right thing, it's like he's trying to be a fake tough guy. And it's like Chris Evans nailed that so much that this John Walker is like, like you're not Cap. And Bucky even tells him, like, just having the shield doesn't make you Cap. And he's like, you ever jumped on a grenade? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, well, you're still not Cap. Like, it's funny because they introduce him and they show Bucky, and he's like, you can tell he's like, this isn't right. Because obviously Bucky, of course, grew up with Steve, and they did the whole thing. So, with him till the end of the line and all that. And now Bucky has to deal with this world where, like I think Falcon says in this episode, your overextended life, where it's like, he was frozen and all that, and then refrozen, and so he's lived basically like 2 lifetimes, and now he's had 2 different Caps, and it doesn't sit right with him. But anyway, guys, basically Bucky goes over to Falcon, and he's like, hey, and this is the first time we see them together, because we didn't get them in the pilot together, so that was cool. And they don't get along. It's funny because like Cap was obviously like super close with Bucky, and then the whole Winter Soldier thing. And he worked with Falcon too. But so like we think these characters have worked together, but they're really just like they were connected. Cap was like the buffer. And so now that Cap is gone, it's kind of like, oh, we don't know if Falcon and Winter Soldier work together. Like, we don't know if Bucky and Falcon work. And it's clear there's like some distaste for each other. So that's interesting because their dynamic is really fun. A lot of comedy in this episode. There's a bit where Bucky is like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, it could be one of the big 3s. And they're like, what's the big 3? And he's like, aliens, androids, or sorcerers or something, or wizards. And Bucky's like, there's no such thing as wizards. And he's like, dude, Doctor Strange. He's like, Doctor Strange is a wizard without a hat. And he's like, think about it. So there's like a bunch of like really fun back and forth there. But basically they're finding out, or they're telling these super soldiers, which we find out there are 8 of them, which is cool. And we thought all the super soldiers were destroyed when Zemo, killed them back in Winter Soldier, but apparently not, because there's a bunch of them running around. So they go to fight on like the top of moving trucks, which is really cool. And they're kind of getting their ass kicked, which they say. And then it's cool because just when like they need some help, it looks like they're going down. I think Falcon's getting choked out. That's when John Walker comes in, and he's like hanging off that helicopter, but he drops down, and the Cap music is kind of playing, and I was like, okay, John's here. But then he starts throwing the shield, where he's like bouncing the shield off of people and bringing it back, and I was like, oh, okay, like this is sick. Like this looks like the old Cap. But you can tell he's not quite there because he's got Lamar Hoskins, which is like his right-hand man. He's like another knockoff guy, where it's like he's kind of cool, but again, it just feels forced, where it's like those two, you can tell like it just something isn't right. They're fighting, but like the super soldiers are doing work, dude. They have like these cool masks where we saw in the pilot, I think they call them like the flag staffers or something. I don't remember, but they're the super soldiers basically. So they start kicking their ass, and like Hoskins goes over, and John throws the shield at the last second, so he like lands on the shield. So he does have some natural like heroic abilities there. He has like the drive to do the right thing, so that was cool. But he's not a super soldier like Steve was, so he does get whooped. Like they just kick him right off the truck, and he falls on a car, and it's clearly like you can't just be Cap. Like Cap was special because he had the super serum, but also he just had like whatever it takes, man. Like he can do this all day. So John doesn't quite have that. He wants to be the popular heroic guy, and he thinks he's doing the right thing. But it's not any Joe Schmo can't just put on the Cap outfit and get the shield and be, as amazing as Cap was, which we find out, which is really cool that the series is diving into that. But basically they regroup. Bucky and Falcon are like, man, we just got our ass kicked. Like, what are we gonna do? We don't have any leads or anything. And then they're like, like, I don't know. And then Falcon's like, there is one guy. And then, like, they get in a plane, and I'm like, ooh, who is this? Because I'm thinking, like, are they going to have, like, a big, like, comeback, like, someone's going to come back from, like, the first movie or something, like, something I didn't know. And they go to see a guy in Baltimore, and there's a really funny scene because Falcon is talking to a little kid, and he's like, oh, he's like, Falcon, is that you? He's like, I didn't even recognize you. And he's like, oh, my dad calls you Black Falcon. And he's like, why? He's like, because I'm black and I'm Falcon. And he's like, yeah, I guess technically. And he's like, so does that make you Black Kid? And he's like, oh, and I was like, it's clever. But they go into a house in Baltimore. They say, hey, I'm looking for Isaiah. And they're like, no one named Isaiah lives here. And he's like, tell him the guy from the barn in, I forget the place, is here to see him. And he's like, all right, hold on. And they go downstairs, or they open it up, and there's like an old guy, and he's like, you know, clearly something's going on, and they're like, hey, you know, I'm surprised you got your arm back. And we find out that Isaiah was actually a black super soldier during Bucky's time as a Winter Soldier. So, like, he's like, yeah, I took off half his metal arm, and he's like, I see you grew it back, because he got a new arm, obviously. And it's like, oh, so there was someone fighting Winter Soldier, a super soldier fighting, we assume for America, against Winter Soldier. And this is where, like, Bucky met. So we assume Bucky was, like, brainwashed still by Hydra. And so Falcon is kind of pissed off because he's like, there's a super soldier here and you never told me. Like, we had a super soldier that could have been on our side with Cap fighting, and, like, no one knew about that. And we know he's a super soldier because he, like, gets mad and he takes, like, the Altoids and, like, whips them into the wall. And so he gets mad. He's like, get out. He's like, I spent 30 years in jail. So he obviously, like, was framed for a crime, or he was on the wrong side or whatever. And he's like, basically took my life away. And he's like, they're taking my blood for super soldiers and stuff. So we don't know if it was his blood that made these other super soldiers, but that's a super interesting connection there that I hope they explore. But they get kicked out, and then Falcon, like, and Bucky get heated in the street, and Falcon is like, why didn't you tell me? He's like, why didn't you tell Steve? And he's like, they had already been through so much, I didn't want to, like, bring him into this. And so basically, like, Isaiah, the black super soldier, was, like, kept a secret. And this is, like, one of my favorite scenes because, like, Falcon is, like, yelling at Bucky, and they go in the middle of the street there, and it's like, it's very clearly, like, we know that they know each other, and it's like, it's just like a friendly, not a friendly argument, but, like, they're not getting hostile, obviously. But this is what I was really surprised that the show is tackling, is the real life issue with all the Black Lives Matter stuff, and, like, how, like, racial profiling and everything, because Falcon's yelling at him, and then, like, a cop pulls up, and I was like, oh, this show is going to cross that line. Like, not cross that line, but they're going to, like, broach that subject, which is great, because I think it needs to be talked about more. And, you know, the cop pulls up, and he's like, whoa, everything okay here? And they're like, it's fine, we're just talking. Like, they're literally like, dude, it's all set. Like, and then the cop goes up to Bucky, and he asks him, like, sir, is he bothering you? Like, asking the white guy if the black guy is bothering him. And it's like, oh, like, I was like, wow, like, hats off to the MCU for tackling that subject. And then the other cop comes up, and he's like, when Bucky's, like, pissed off, he's like, no, dude, we're fine. He's like, do you know who this is? And then, like, the cop is like, and then the other cop whispers in his ear, and he's like, tells him that he's the Falcon. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you. He's like, Mr. Wilson, I didn't recognize you without the goggles. And then Falcon's, like, all pissed off, and they're like, all right, just a second. And like, because a second squad car, like, shows up, and they're going to tell them to back off. But then we find out there's a warrant out for Bucky's arrest because he skipped his therapy session. He's like, dude, you can't do that. So they got to take him in, and I was like, oh, interesting. And obviously Falcon finds out here that he skipped his therapy session. So Falcon can't trust this guy because now he's telling him, or now he's learning that there's a super soldier that he wasn't told about, that they could have used, and he's also like, oh, dude, like, now you're not going to therapy? He's like, how can I trust you? How can I work with you if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, especially when you used to be brainwashed? And he's like, he doesn't know about the nightmares and stuff. So Bucky gets locked up, and I was like, this is interesting. I don't know where this is going to go. And then eventually the therapist comes and talks to Sam, and he's like, oh, thanks so much for getting Bucky out. And she's like, oh, that wasn't me. And then John Walker's over there, and he's like, got a goofy smile, And I was like, oh man, this guy. They did a really good job because like it's when he shows up every time now, it's like, oh, this fucking guy, like because he's just like, it's me, Captain America. It's like a, where like Steve showed up every time and it was like badass, and like even though Steve had like a smile and everything, and like I don't know, Chris Evans is ripped too, so like, but he was just like he was Captain America, and then this guy like it's very clear that he's not the same. And again, I'm repeating myself, but it's awesome though because if they intentionally did that, I'm sure, but it is cool that they kind of play with that idea. But basically, John lets them out, and he's like, "Hey, I'll be outside," and he's like walking around without his helmet on and stuff, and it's kind of weird because Cap never did that. But they go outside and they're like meeting, and they're like, "Hey, like you need to work with us. It's best to work with us." There's a scene I think I skipped over where they're like they're walking Bucky and Cap after the not Bucky and Cap, Falcon and Bucky are walking on like it's a really cool like side shot. Or it's like this grassy field, and it's like right after they lost to the super soldiers, and they're walking, and then John Walker's in the back of like a Humvee or whatever, and he pulls up and he's like, "Hey, you guys need a ride?" And it's like they keep walking, and then the truck stops, and then they just walk past, and he's like, keep going, and it's like a funny little bit, and there's like an awesome shot of them like in the truck, with the shield there, and it's like. All of the shots in this show are great. They were like all top notch, where I was like, wow, this looks straight out of the movies. This could have been like a Cap movie on its own. So I'm really, really glad that they're putting the AAA budget into the show because it really pays off and it really makes you feel connected to that the whole MCU. And it's not just like low quality spin-off show. It's like, no, this is a high quality show that's going to not only enhance the past movies, but enhance any future movies and enhance the MCU as a whole. So that was all awesome. But yeah, going back to sort of towards the end here, guys. So they're talking to John and Hoskins, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you got to work with us." And John Walker's like, he's like, being Cap would be so much better if I had Cap's right hand man. And Falcon is like, when they're in the truck, Falcon's like, and it's always the last line. He walks out, and they're like, "No, dude, we don't want to work with you." But Falcon tells him here, like, "Dude, we're free agents." He's like, "We have more flexibility." He's like, "You guys need to get like government approvals and appraisal and all that stuff." And this reminded me of like the Sokovia Accords, because it's like when they talked about I think Cap said like, what if someone like needs us and we can't, like we're refused to go, or like we're not allowed to go, and like that's kind of what this is, where it's like Cap can save it, but like he needs to get approval, he needs to get check mark off of here, where like if someone's in trouble, Falcon and Bucky can just be like, "All right, let's go," like we don't answer to anybody. So that they're like, it's better that we just that kind of do our own thing. And then that's when John says like, "All right, well then what I suggest is you stay the hell out of my way." And it was trying to be a cool line, but John Walker is so cheesy, where I'm like, all right, dude, you're not tough, like you don't have super serum, like you're not like, dude, Falcon will kick your ass, and Bucky will like throat punch you with his vibranium arm. So he's like, stay out of my way. And I'm like, all right, so now John Walker's going to kind of become like the villain, or Cap's going to get in their way. But I'm like, I don't know. I like the idea of like an evil Cap. That would be sick. But like, I'm interested to see if like John's going to eventually end up taking like some sort of super serum and then become like an evil Cap or something. That would be sick. But like, I was like, this guy's a chump, dude. Like they're not afraid of John Walker. Like, honestly. So I was like, it's a cool idea, but when that line happened, I was like, all right, like, what are you gonna do, John Walker? But then at the end here, so Cap and I keep saying Cap, and this is probably gonna happen a lot. Falcon and Bucky are walking away, and they're like, all right, dude, we got nothing. But like, we know those are super soldiers. There's a brief scene where the super soldiers are saying like, they're like in there, they're like erasing their aliases, and the leader, Callie, I think her name is. She gets like a text and it says like, "You have something I need" or something, and it's like, "I'm gonna find you and kill you." And she's like, "Ooh, I'll deal with this later." And then she's like, "Wrong number." And like the super soldiers are obviously on the move. There's like a scene at the end where one of the big guys like sacrifices himself. He like throws the power lines down because they're they're shipping something. I don't know if it's like super serum or what it was. I missed that part, but they're getting on a plane, and then like the only way to get the plane on the plane where the cops don't get them is for the big guy to like throw the power lines down, and he sacrifices himself, and it's supposed to be like heroic moment, but I was kind of like, all right, we only got like one quick scene with this guy, so I didn't really feel any emotional connection to that. But yeah, the cops don't get there, the plane takes off. You got to think that they're probably just tracking the plane, but for the moment, the super soldiers get away, and then Falcon and Bucky are like, okay, what do we do? Because we don't have any leads. And they're like, you know what? Hydra. They're like, there's one more thing we can do. And he's like, no. Falcon's like, I know what you're thinking, we're not going to do it. And he's like, dude, he knows all of Hydra's stuff. He's like, he knows everything. He would have information on the super soldiers. And Falcon's like, fine. He's like, we're going to go see Zemo. And I was like, oh, dude, sick. Zemo was the guy from the main villain from Winter Soldier, where, spoilers for Winter Soldier, go see it. It's one of my favorite MCU movies. Where Black Panther saves him from killing himself at the end, where he like has a voicemail from his wife or whatever, and he deletes it, and he's like about to shoot himself, and Black Panther stops him. R.I.P. Chadwick Boseman. And Zemo is like locked up, but he is the one who like we think killed all the Winter Soldiers, and he's the one who like broke Bucky out. He knows how to brainwash Bucky or say the words. So it'd be interesting to see if he like remembers that and if he turns Bucky back into Winter Soldier. So it's like a risk going there, but it's interesting to see. But that's how the episode ends. Okay, guys. So for a score for this one, this is a really strong episode. It just continued last week's like strong pilot, and I just thought there were just so many AAA moments. And I'm just really impressed with the show overall. And like I said, I had such high expectations going in. I was super excited for the show, and they're just exceeding them. And so I'm like, I already had the bar so high, and now it's just like, I can't believe that like the MCU not only exists, but like just the fact that they continue to build on things and like take like different parts of the MCU and be like, oh, now we're gonna have a side story about this, but it's not gonna feel like a side story because it's gonna really tie into everything, and there's cool moments. And we already got Don Cheadle in the pilot, and so I'm sure there's gonna be another big cameo somewhere throughout the series. I think it's only 6 episodes, but they're like all an hour or 50 minutes long. Yeah, super excited. A score for this one, I'm gonna give it a 9.6. I thought the action was really cool, but I thought overall just like Bucky and Falcon's relationship is really, really good. They like clearly hate each other. There's like a therapy scene which I didn't really touch on, but like she's like, all right, we're gonna do the soul gazing exercise, and they're like, oh, I must love this, and he's like, oh yeah, you're really gonna like it. And he's like, I'm sure you will. And it's like, it's just this back and forth where they're like super sarcastic with each other. And they like get closer and their knees are touching, and she's like, I need you to get closer. And they're like, there's like a quick scene where they throw their hands up, and they're like, all right, do you want me to go? And I thought there was going to be an on your left drop there, but they didn't do that, or maybe they did and I didn't hear it. But then like they literally like scooch in, so like their knees are touching, and he's like, this is very close, and he's like, just the way you like it. And it's like, it's so good. So like they say they're gonna squash their beef and come back, and Bucky says like, what's rule number 2 again? And she says like, don't hurt anybody. And he's like, goodbye. And so it's like, he's not saying I'm not gonna do rule number 2. He's just like, don't hurt anybody. He's like, I can't guarantee that. But yeah, just, I mean, Falcon and Bucky's interactions, the way they treat John Walker, because kind of like how I'm viewing it, the show, where I'm like, who is this guy? Like, you know, you think you can just be Cap, but you can't be Cap. So I like that they're pushing back against him, and now he's going to be probably like the de facto villain. So it's basically like them against the government, and it should be super fun. But I just thought the action was great. I thought introducing the super soldiers or getting more into them and confirming that they are super soldiers was cool. And just like, we got to see a little bit of John Walker. So even though like I'm not crazy about the character, I really like that they gave him like a little bit of a backstory. It feels very much like a juvenile, like high school thing. Like he goes back to his high school to introduce the world to Captain America, and I'm like, this is weird. You think he would do like a press conference or something, but he just did like oh, reliving the glory days, and it's like, look at me now. So like that was cool, but I think it fits perfectly with the character. I'm really, really happy with how they're treating that character, because it kind of makes you like get annoyed or hate him a little bit, and you're like, but that's how he's written, that's how he's designed. It's so obvious. It's like, if he came in and just acted exactly like Cap, you would be like, this doesn't work, dude. Like, we already had Steve Rogers, you can't replace him. So the fact that he's trying but also like failing and being different was predictable, but I really like that. So yeah, but a pretty high score. I just think it's an awesome episode, and I was like ready for episode 3 right away. And like this week to week wait feels like a long time with this show, but man, I can't wait to see not only where it goes, but like how it wraps up. And I just want Marvel to like put these shows out every week now. So, or like like once WandaVision ends, we got Falcon Winter Soldier. I think we're getting Loki. So like now, I just have such high expectations now for all these Disney Plus like MCU series, because I think they really like put in the time, they had a plan, they put in the budget, and they're like, look, these are all gonna blow you away. Like WandaVision's gonna be great, Falcon Winter Soldier's gonna be great, Loki's probably gonna be great, and they're just like, we're just gonna keep coming, and then people are gonna watch that, and it's gonna grow the MCU, and people who didn't watch the MCU before are gonna start watching it, and it's like, it's just sick, because it's like, it's growing Disney Plus. They're, they said like over 100 million subscribers are now or something. So yeah, I'm kind of ranting here, guys, but yeah, awesome episode, awesome series, super excited, and I can't wait for next week. With that being said, guys, thanks for checking out On Your Left episode 2. Thanks for checking out Project Potter, guys. Go check out Reviewers Assemble, which is our MCU group review that we did. Endgame's not out yet, but that'll be coming soon, so keep an eye out for that. But go check out all the other reviews, guys. Go check out the Mr. Robot content, the Star Wars content, the John Wick content, whole bunch of stuff on there, guys. Ghost of Tsushima. I'm not gonna list every series, but check out the channel. We're just over 500 subs now, guys. So the John Walker thumbs up approval there. But yeah, thank you guys for checking out the channel. I have a blast doing this. I couldn't do it without you guys. So I appreciate the support. And until next time, guys, peace.